Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday once again. Every Tuesday evening we gather for show and share here at Knox Makers. So we like to show what we're working on, what works, what doesn't work, what's in progress, et cetera, et cetera. So just a show of hands, who's here tonight? Yes, all right. And we also want to welcome the 7,000 or 8,000 people online that are watching. Do we have anybody here that is new that's never been to show and share? Yes, we do have some. Welcome. If you haven't had a tour already, check with somebody with a handy dandy badge on afterwards and they can show you about and show you what we're all about. We have to say hi, Dodie, because she is one of the many thousands that are watching this evening. And since we have a long list, let's just get on with it. Andrew has an automatic volume adjuster.
Hello. So, like I'm sure many of you, during the pandemic, I started watching a lot more TV and getting into streaming services and watching movies. And as I did, I realized that the audio mixing is not done very well. You'll have some scenes where it gets really loud and some scenes where it gets really quiet. And I've always had to reach for my TV remote to turn up or down the volume. And I'm lazy, and that's annoying. So I made this thing, and it's surprisingly small. It was a lot smaller. This one? There. It's a lot smaller than I initially anticipated, and I have more of them. Because this board is about 2 inches this way and 1 inch this way, so it's a lot smaller than I expected it to be. But the premise is pretty simple. This is a little microphone that listens to the sound in the room, and then it communicates to this microcontroller here with settings that you can modify through these potentiometers, and it will output to this little IR LED that acts as a remote and can turn the volume up and down on your TV. So you can put this somewhere that it would reach, and so long as it's within a upper and lower boundary, it won't do anything. If it gets below the boundary, it'll turn the TV up, and if it gets above the boundary, it will turn it back down. So. Pretty cool. Yeah. When do they go on sale? So actually, I have quite a few extras of them. So if you want to make your own, I haven't open sourced it yet, but I plan to, and I also have pictures of the. This is the schematic.
Probably retire on this thing.
And I have extra boards. I'm going to open source this. Right now it's not, because I forgot before I left. But I have pictures and stuff. If anybody wants a board because they want to make their own, I'm giving them away. I don't have a use for them. So if you would like one, you can have one. And the green board that you may have seen was my first revision, and it was a little bit too small. All of the capacitors and the resistors, which you can't tell that much, but I had to get them remade, and it was very sad. But I got them in black this time because I thought that it looked cooler. But
How do you deal with the code for the volume in TV?
so it's different per TV. So you would have to tell it which TV you're talking to, but most of those codes you can just change. It's just a variable that you can change in the code of the microcontroller. Yes, but all of those codes are on the online somewhere because somebody has made a universal remote for that. So you can find it most places.
Is that microcontroller for controlling TVs?
No, so this is just an Adafruit QT Pi. There's nothing special about it. It's just the smallest and most budget-ish microcontroller that I could find, because when I was making this, I wanted it to work and I wanted it to be as small as possible, so the big Arduinos weren't going to work for me.
CAD package and fabrication house.
Sorry, one more time?
What did you design it in?
Mm-hmm.
And who built your PCB?
Okay, so it was designed in KiCad, and PCBWay built them out of no cost myself. They reached out to me. They thought that my projects were cool. They wanted to sponsor a project, so they gave me these boards. I do also have OshPark versions of these that have clear solder mask, and you can see the copper traces, and they look a little bit cooler. But I don't know where they are. They haven't been very vocal about the fabrication process.
Well, one more. What is your background to do this?
So I am currently studying mechatronics engineering at Roane State, which is mechanical, electrical, and computer science. So,
It's a good combination.
yes, yeah, I can. Robots. Anybody else have questions? Great.
Very cool.
Andrew, that is super cool. I know my wife is going to want one because she's always complaining about, that's too loud, that's too soft. David has a sewing machine cover, which I'm wondering if he made on a sewing machine.
I did, in fact, make it with a sewing machine. I have a old Singer industrial machine that I had inherited from a family friend that I'm in the process of cleaning up, but while I'm in the process and after it's up and going, it's going to need something to keep the dust off when I'm not using it. So this weekend I came in during Stitch and Bitch and made a sewing machine cover. I found this really cool vintage fabric in our fabric bins. I used some heavyweight interfacing material and some other material that I used to do the trim on the back. The sewing machine that I have is a belt drive machine, so I did have to do a cutout on the back to accommodate the belt that drives the actual machine. Thank you, Sue, for helping me on my project, but I was pretty happy with how it turned out, so I thought I'd share it. Sure. So this is the pretty side there. And there's some strands and stuff here. It's not as pretty, but nobody looks on the inside anyway. So, all right. Thank you. Any other questions? Sue.
Gotta ask, how long did it take?
Too long for what it is, because I'm not good at this.
Yeah.
Yes, but it was a fun project. I probably spent the lion's share of my weekend on it. The orange trim piece was actually really finicky. The material did not want to press. I probably should have used some spray starch on it to help keep shape while I formed it into the binding, but you know, we made it through. It's done. I might use different material on my next project because I have another machine that also needs a cover. So, all right.
I see a theme developing here. Sue made a cover. I don't know if it's for Jerry or... where is Sue? There she is. Are you going to cover Jerry? No, that won't fit over Jerry.
Well, for Jerry, that would be a hat, would it not? Yes. Yeah. So much like David, I was asked to make a cover for something to keep the dust off of it. And so I looked in my fabric stash, and lo and behold, from 5 years ago, when I made a bottle, grandson was soon to be born, so it was a bottle insulated bag. And I wanted to be able to have it washable. So I had gotten some ripstop, blue ripstop. But I'd already cut it, and there wasn't an awful lot of it there. So I ended up having to do kind of a terrible patch to cover up the square, the rectangle I had cut out of it. And then it wasn't quite big enough to get around yet, so I had to put a nice little triangle piece in there to make it big enough to go around the bottom. This is for the CNC computer monitor and keyboard work area, right? So I finally got that part together, and then it was, well, like, how am I going to make it easy for folks to put on and off? So I thought about some straps. And we have this back in Fiber Arts, but that's just way too pretty to be giving over to the wood shop, right? So, sorry, Brian, wherever you are. I remembered I had these lanyards I had gotten from work that were extra, and they were just going to throw them away. And I went, I bet I could use that. So I did, and what I did is double them to make, you can't see Brunswick anymore. And they made very nice holding straps to hold it up with, right? So in the main portion of the cover of the fabric I used, this is all I had left. Cutting it close, yes. But I didn't want to stop there. So onward I went. I wanted to make the front of it, I don't want the ugly side or my patch-up job showing all the time. Yeah. So I want to make it easily identifiable to know which side is the front side. So I brought out my double-sided fusible and some lettering. Hey! Now you might also notice that there's some corners cut out. Waste not, want not. I wear sweats a lot, and sweats don't have pockets. And I love to have my phone with me wherever I go, and I need a pocket for my phone. So I made a pocket for my phone. Sadly, I've left my phone on the chair back there, but you should be able to get the idea of the lanyard with the pocket for the phone. Now, I don't care if it says Brunswick because it's a company I used to work for. So now I can have my phone with me at all times, even if I don't have pockets on my pants. Yay!
So that's 50 to 100% consumed of all the fabric?
What are you gonna do with that?
I did have this triangle left, right? And I haven't quite decided what to do with this one yet. But I will get there. I'll find something. Yes, Neil?
After showing shirt, can I give you the dimensions for the big lathe and woodworking?
Still got some stuff to do for me in machine.
Yes, I have requests from other zones as well, so we'll get there. We'll get there. I try to help out the other zones as I can. Anything else?
How long did it take?
Oh. Yeah. Well, I kind of work at things and then stop and work and stop, and I suppose if I put all my little half hours together, maybe 2 hours. Yeah, it goes by really fast. I mean, it's, as you can see, it isn't pretty, and I didn't spend a lot of time being super careful with it either. So, but it should work. So, with that, I was hoping Brian would be here, but in his absence, I'm going to hand it over to Billy so he can put it on his machine when he gets out there. So thank you all.
Thank you, Sue. We really appreciate all the work you do around here. If you could just get Jerry to do something. That guy says he never again volunteer yourself. And for somebody that won't volunteer, he does more stuff around here. So thank you also, Jerry, for not doing anything or whatever. Next, we have somebody's phone.
I did have it up.
We did. We have Thea. She's going to measure twice and craft once. You've been hanging around with those woodworking guys.
No, it's a chronic problem. It doesn't matter whether you're in metalworking, woodworking, quilting, it's a big issue too, or even embroidery. You always have to double check where your starting point is. Hardinger is a type of embroidery where you do these solid blocks, but it's all geometric, so you have to make sure you count right. I had finished this case, and I was starting the next part of the project, because it's this kit, where you have your little pouch and then the Biscornu pincushion. So I still had some of this pale color on, and the only place that's showing on the Biscornu is the center. So I went ahead and I started with the colors I had loaded, and then I worked around it. And as you can see, it's not centered. So I'm gonna have to pick the center back out because I can't finish the design because I have to put little pieces in there. So,
Loaded, was this done on a machine or a boom?
no, this is by hand.
By hand?
Yeah.
So it was loaded into your needle?
No, you count. The pattern is like this. It's a counted embroidery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That would make me crazy. How long did that much take you?
I don't remember how long it took me to get this far. I got frustrated when I realized the depth of the failure. So it went into a box, and then I was looking for a different project this past weekend, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a fail I can share. Because it really doesn't matter what department you're in. If your numbers are off, your project is toast. Doesn't matter if it's embroidery, if you drop a stitch knitting, whether you're quilting, woodworking, metalworking, just always double check your numbers.
So on the graph
Yes. So on these red lines, you're actually, these ones are going over 2 stitches diagonally, but the longer ones are actually 4 stitches straight. So yeah, you have to count your lines.
That's why it looks solid, because
They're yeah, you're stitching every stitch, yeah. And it's not a, you could make a lamp shade though.
Yes, yes. I do have plans for some steel.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested in the basics of Hardinger, I did bring a beginner level book
What's the
today.
name of it?
Hardinger, H-A-R-D. Hardinger embroidery.
Because it's hard. That is amazing, totally amazing. Oh, this is interesting. Robin has Sue's solution. Sue, what was your problem?
No, I gave solutions.
Okay.
Hello. So, whoops. The problem starts here for me. This is our weather station, and what it's showing you, oops, is a graph, of this year. And what you're looking at is basically the dark line is an average, and then the upper lines and the lower lines are what actually happened this year for cold and heat. So we know what's interesting. We know when they're going to happen. You've heard blackberry winters, redbud winters, so you know when they're going to happen. Mostly. So forward thinking, we want to protect against, against weather. So this is, my husband built some hoop houses, and those are blueberries in there, very low res. So we can throw shade cloth up and then frost cloth up. And so we did that. So here's the frost cloth. And it's sort of designed so I can do it by myself in a windstorm without my husband, because he's usually somewhere else. Yep. Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. So this is an example of it being thrown over in a windstorm. We have a direct line of wind that takes everything out. So we managed to get that up, and here it's the next day with the sun up. So it works pretty much. I still have yet to work out the bottom and how they attach, and I've got clips that hold it on. But what happened, and then Sue would like this too as well, it's long, so you mark it as long so you know in a windstorm when it's dark which way it goes. And these are the problem. We had our berries, our first berries, in full bloom, and it was destined to be a very cold evening, so it had to go up. But what happened is that it ripped. These things that hold it together are ties, and they ripped my beautiful frost cloth. So Sue fixed it. She came up with a noodle that goes over all the zip ties that are out, that ripped all my frost cloth. So I thought it was brilliant, because I think imagination can save the world. So there's my frost cloth. That'll be the next project. It's all ripped, and there's a big machine back there. So I'll ask for a lesson to sew that. So yay, Sue, and imagination.
Lots of imagination going on around this place. I love it. Okay, Joe Pardue, who likes to turn dirt into things you can eat, has a grow box prototype.
Okay.
Did I get that right in terms of everything you said?
Yes. So, I was out there working on this and somebody says, oh, you ought to show it and do it in show and share. And I agreed, and then I have no idea what I'm doing up here. I agreed, but I don't have a plan, so let's see if I can make any of this work. Yeah, is there, oh, okay.
See it?
Yeah, no, yep.
Some light.
Let's just pull this out a little bit. There we go. There we go. Oh, sorry. So, yeah, all right, that's too much. How about that? Can you see? Isn't that pretty? Oh, okay. And what this is I'm sure everybody's sick of hearing this, but I'm working on growing vegetables indoors, and I'm experimenting with a lot of different things. And this happens to be what I'm calling a 1/4 cubic meter grow chamber. And this is a prototype for it. It's kind of ugly. But this is about the size of the grow chamber they use on the ISIS to grow tomatoes, the space station. And so I was thinking once I get this developed, it would be nice at this size because it can be cheaply produced and they could use it in schools to say, hey, let's make tomatoes like they do in space. This particular thing, this cheap pan is going to be used for what's called the Kratky method. And the Kratky method is a hydroponic method that where you put it, you fill this about 2 inches from the top with water with the fertilizer in it, and then you put a seed in this rock wool in this little cup, and the cup fits in a hole that I'm going to cut into this thing, and the very bottom of this goes into the water, and then the seed grows out, and it starts putting roots out the bottom, and as it sucks the water up, the water level drops, and the roots have oxygen, so you don't have to aerate it. And let's see, I'm going to have a fan up here, and I'm going to cut holes in it. And I've talked before about my other shelf system I've got at home that I'm growing lettuce and tomatoes in. But this is just yet another thing to do. And so, any questions? Yeah. No.
Would that be the same as deep water culture?
Say again?
Would that be the same as deep water culture?
No, deep water culture, bubblers. They got bubblers in them. That doesn't have any bubblers in it. It's called Kratky, K-R-A-T-K-Y. It's a guy from Hawaii. And the advantage is it's not only cheap, doesn't require any labor. I probably have to put water in this maybe once every 2 weeks or once a month. And as long as you keep the fertilizer correct. Was another question, Tracy?
I was wondering if you have trouble regulating water temperature.
What I'm working with is going to assume this is done in a suburban house. It's a residential, indoor, controlled environment, agriculture. And I assume a resident's going to be somewhere between 67 and 73. So that's not going to make a lot of difference in what the plants do. Okay. So what
What kind of fertilizer?
Good question. I am actually, I have decided to go with Miracle Grow in everything I'm doing right now. Everybody who knows anything is supposed to hate Miracle Grow. Well, as it turns out that a lot of their stuff is okay. It's not great, it's not terrible, but you can get it. And a lot of the things that are used, you see on YouTube, things like this are used for growing cannabis, and they will talk about, well, they don't mind spending $100 on fertilizer, but I want to keep it as cheap as possible. So I'm working with Miracle Grow, and I'm doing a special dilution so that I can just mix it up and fill it, and I don't have to add. Miracle Grow usually says like you mix a concentrate and use it every 2 weeks, but I am right now using it every time I water. It's got a little bit of Miracle Grow in there. And I use a kitchen scale, and you got to be down to fractions of a gram to get it right. But it's cheap and available, and so am I. So any questions? Any other questions? Yes.
On the space station, how do they keep the water in place if there's no gravity?
Say how to.
How do they keep the water in place with no gravity?
That is such a good question. No, they have all kinds of problems with that, but they grow them they grow them like in bags, and I'm not going to go in. They've used all kinds of variations, but they don't leave water loose. However, there's a great story about the first tomatoes were being, the guy, forget his name, he was harvesting the tomatoes for up there, and they were going to divide up what they had, and they were going to divide it among them to eat. And a bag with 3 tomatoes in it disappeared mysteriously. So for 8 months, everybody said he stole them and he ate them. And anyway, he came back to Earth, and they were having a big celebration up there for the 25th year of something or another. And they found the bag. It had actually floated away from him and gotten behind something and rotted. But, that's the space station. Sorry about that. Any other questions? Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I'll get that.
Okay, we're back. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's a good one. It's a lamp. You're right, it is. All these people infringing on my territory. Oh, man. And Neil's going to make an announcement. I don't know if I'm going to let him or not. Okay, Evan has a hardtail mountain bike frame.
Hello. So I've been working on this mountain bike frame for a while. I just finished welding it up this weekend. Yeah, it's a steel hardtail mountain bike. I started designing it back in November, and I wanted to make it nice and long in the front so it's good at high speeds, but keep it kind of steep so the actual shock works better, and then pretty short in the back so it's nice and nimble. And then a really short seat post so I could put like the biggest dropper post I could find in there. So I made the design, and then I needed to make a fixture to actually weld it. Anyways, so here is the design in Fusion. So I put all the wheels in and the handlebars and whatnot to try and make sure it all fit, and I wasn't going to have to hack away at things. And then I designed this welding fixture for it, which I shared a while ago, but didn't actually bring it in. But yeah, it's all 4130 chromoly steel. They're all like bike specific tubes, so these are like butted, so they'll be 0.8 millimeters thick on the ends, and then they go down to 0.5 millimeters thick wall thickness. So they're really thin, pretty light for a steel bike. But yeah, this one is this is my second frame I've made, and it was a bit more complicated. This is actually 27 parts all welded together into this frame. That does include some of these little zip tie mounts and whatnot. But I hand cut all the tubes and then made paper templates to file them down to fit. There's a bunch of really nice programs online where you can input your angles and your tube diameters and your wall thicknesses, and you can print out a template and then wrap it around your tube and mark it, and it'll give you a nice miter, which was very handy for a lot of the practice tubes I did as I was practicing my welding. But for these ones, you have one on each end, so I was like trying to figure out how to phase them correctly. So I ended up just making in Fusion like a full template for each tube, and then I could actually laser cut it. I could have just printed it on the plotter, but I didn't know it was there at the time. But that way I could have both, things marked at once. And then for this tube, which has 3 different miters, it kind of included all that in one. And especially once you get to the rear, you get these like complex angles. And so like usually the programs only give you in a single plane. But anyway, so hand filed, spent many hours just filing away, putting the tubes in my frame fixture, checking the gaps. And you get into a nice cycle of just chasing your tail kind of around as you'll adjust it up here, and then that messes up something down here. So it's a real fun process, a lot of time filing. But here's my frame fixture. And basically the way this works is you have your set points of, this is like defined, this is kind of your origin where your cranks go, and then you set the angle of your seat tube relative to the head tube, and then I have this dummy axle in here, and so that is also held in there. And so with those kind of points, you can kind of just make the tubes fit in between there, and it's close enough. Like those are the important parts of the bike and how you ride it and components fit. So it's like, some of these tubes are probably a little different from what I actually designed, but they're close enough. But here's the front. So I tacked it all up. And then since I shared the frame fixture, I actually machined this little holder thing to hold things as I was tacking them, because I ran into that problem on my first frame, and it was a bit tricky, but that was very helpful. But when I went to go welding it, I started with individual parts. So this seat tube is actually 2 pieces. This top kind of 3 inches is a piece of tube I turned on the lathe. And so I bored it out to the diameter, like inner diameter I needed for the seat tube, and then added a step so it's slotted into this bent tube. Because I bought this tube bent, but you can't buy a butted tube that's bent. So you have to make a little seat tube collar and weld it in there. And then machined the little relief on the mill there so I can clamp the seat post. And then this is the yoke right here. So this is 3 pieces of metal that I stole a design from online and ordered my own plate for it and then welded it together. But it's asymmetric, so you have like chain ring clearance here. And that just allows you to kind of have a shorter rear end. Same thing with the bent tube. That's all to bring the wheel closer. And still kind of have clearance for everything. But I welded up some of those smaller things, welded on these zip tie mounts, did the front, and then I started cutting the rear tubes. These ones I cut with just the angle grinder and cut them about 4 millimeters too short. But I cut them both about 4 millimeters too short, so it worked out. But you can see kind of holding it up in there. Here's me drilling some vent holes because I forgot to do it before I tacked it in. So there's like vent holes in some of these tubes so that you're not just welding the tube fully sealed, which is a bit trickier to do, and creates like a little bit of a vacuum in the tube. But yeah, the welding, I'm not an amazing welder. I'm very glad it's in one piece. I burned a lot of holes in it and got really good at filling holes. I had a couple times too where you like have to stand up, so it's like balancing on one foot, doing the foot pedal, and that the flexible TIG head was very helpful in some of these corners. And then the rear was really tricky because pretty much all the joints you're welding super thin steel to solid steel. So these chain stays are 0.7 millimeters thick, and you're welding to like solid steel. So they just want very differing heats on those, so I had to like kind of wash it up onto the thinner steel. And I try and like jump around so I don't warp the frame as I'm welding it. So I'll weld like, a little bit here and then jump over here. And I welded it out of the fixture, but I tacked it in the fixture and whatnot. But anyways, it took a while. I did my last tube this Sunday. This one is one of the ones I actually bent myself. And this one I was, everything else was fully welded, and I had cut it and kind of measured it with my wheel prior. And then I forgot my wheel at home, and I was like, oh, I should really go and get this wheel and double check it before I tack it on here or even fully weld it on here. But I was very optimistic in my previous work and didn't do that. And it is just like one little tire knob rubs right here. So I think I need to true up the back and then it'll have clearance. Or maybe I'll buy a smaller tire or I'll grind this out. I don't know. Anyways, it's close enough. It's fixable, so that's all right. But should have taken the really should have taken the time to measure that one. But yeah, so these are all zip tie mounts. I bought these from a company, and the same company that makes these dropouts. They're a machine shop out of Richmond, California. Basically make custom bicycle parts. They make the dummy axle and all that. And then I also milled this little dropper port, so the hose for the dropper post will go into the bottom of the seat tube there, and you have your seat dropper. But yeah, it's looking forward to riding it. It's you know, like I said, I started the design in November and cut my first tubes in February, so it's been a while, but it's in one piece.
That's a tremendous amount of work.
It took a while. It was a good learning experience. This one was a lot smoother than my first frame. The first frame, I at least knew what fixtures I wanted to make this time. The first frame, I was like making scrap metal, like welding fixtures as I was doing it. But this fixture I made is adjustable, so you can actually use it for, you know, so all these parts have like those quick release knobs, so you can just adjust it and, you know, you put your frame into it in CAD and then you can plug in where everything needs to go. And I use that as like kind of the source of truth to know if my tube is correct. But yeah, remaining, I gotta remount some of these because, you know, these are the bottom brackets came threaded because it's a left and right thread, but when you weld it, the threads get really messed up, so you gotta go chase the threads. So I'm gonna do some finishing operations on it, figure out what I'm gonna do here.
When will you ride it?
Hopefully sometime in July. I don't own the tools to ream these because they're really expensive and specialty, but some bike shops have them, so I need to find someone who has those and can do that for me. And then I'm gonna paint it. I think I'm gonna use the vinyl cutter to like make some stencils to do some paint work on it. And I bought a complete bike to get all the components for this, so that way I knew everything was gonna fit. I just had to design a frame to like swap in. So I have all the parts for it, mostly. So I'll probably ride it before I paint it, just to double check. But yeah, really excited to go for a ride. Hopefully it doesn't break on the first drop or anything, but we'll see.
Could you put your practice piece up there again? Would you mind if I took a picture of it?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, these are just some McMaster steel tubes. I mean, so yeah, like I said, a lot of these are specialty bike tubes that are butted, but like this was just a McMaster chromoly steel that I bought, and I bought a bunch of them and hand filed all those as well. I got real good with the body saw and the hand file. Anyways. As far as materials, probably $300-400 just for, yeah, the bike tubes are a little bit expensive. These dropouts are about $90. So some of the CNC parts get a little pricey, but yeah, as far as materials, and then I put a whole bunch of filler metal in there as well. I used some ER70S-2. But yeah, it was good exercise and some sawing and filing and welding. Yeah. Any other questions?
You said one of the tubes had a different diameter or different wall thickness on the ends?
Yeah. So yeah, so each of these tubes, this one is, it's like 1 1/8" outer diameter, and then the ends of it are 0.9 millimeters thick, and it somewhere, I don't know where the butt actually ends, but it goes down to 0.6 millimeters. And then this one is 1.5 inches outer diameter, and it's 0.8 millimeters to 0.5 millimeters. So welding this one on was, I burned a hole right in the middle of it because it's pretty thin. But yeah, so they do that just they have I guess a better flex feeling to them, and then thicker on the ends so you can actually weld them. This one is straight gauge because, like I said, you can't really bend a butted tube. And I bought this bent because it was from the bicycle fabrication supply. They sell a bunch of bike tubes, but they have a really nice bender that can bend things and not ripple them. Likewise, like these came pre-bent as well. And these actually taper as well. So they start at like 16 millimeters and taper down. This is only like 15, but the actual tube was much longer in it. And then this one tapers as well, so it's 19 millimeters to 12.5. So yeah, that's why I had to make my own paper templates for this one as well. But actually, these ones I made the paper template the negative, so I could figure out what length to cut it at. But anyways.
Nice work, Evan. Very nice. Okay, last but not least, we've got Neil who's going to chatter. Or he made a chatter, or something about a chatter.
Well, about 40 years ago when I first got into wood turning, I was a member of the South Florida Wood Turners Guild. And I went into a meeting one night and there was they had their own version of show and share. And they had some pieces on a table and I looked at it and one of them had some very intricate, subtle carving on it. So I went to the person who made it and I asked him, that carving's incredible, how long did it take you? And he said, oh, about less than 30 seconds. And that really surprised me, and of course I had to know more, and it turned out that's the first night I learned of a process called chatterwork turning. And how that works is based on a spring steel tool that vibrates or gets, as you apply it to the wood, it starts bending and snaps back up and snaps back up and so forth, leaving behind a very intricate little turning or decoration on the turning. And I am going to pass around a piece because I'm not too sure how well this is going to show up, but we have coming up next week on Thursday, the 27th, the first As the Lathe Turns social period. And I wanted to talk about, one of the things I want to talk about and get a started discussion on was how you can make some of your own turning tools. And I thought about the chatterwork. That'd be a good one because we never cover that in any of the classes. And I, of course, wanted to check and see how available the tools were so I could recommend where they could buy a chatter tool. And it seems that the chatter tools that they were making 40 years ago, they're not making anymore. And the ones that they are making are incredibly expensive. So being the cheap person I am, I said, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. And wood turners are pretty much known for making their own tools. So fast trip to YouTube, one of my favorite sources of information, and found that there was a way to make a chatter tool for very reasonable and without a whole lot of experience of working anything. The basic tool itself is a handle. Let's see. With a device here that is going to hold the piece of spring steel, which looks like this. And this created problem number 2 was nobody sells replacement spring steel like this, so I had to decide how could I get a piece of steel that was appropriate for this. And that was another thing that was covered on YouTube, which was to use a Sawzall blade, or also known as a reciprocating saw, which was just the right thickness. And I ground that down to make this tool here, or make this spring steel piece, which slips in here. Let's see. Tightens down, and then this is the portion here that rubs against the wood. To give you somewhat of an idea as to what chatterwork looks like once it is made, I tested this tool after I finished it on this piece of arborvitae, and that's what you start getting. It looks like something out of a spirograph. And I'm also going to pass, I don't know if this is going to show up well on this top. Nah, not really.
You can zoom in.
Yeah, zoom in on that. There we go. So I will start these passing around. You can see what that is. Total cost, instead of spending $100, was $2. The metal part here is actually a hex head bolt, which was drilled at the end here, and then tapped for the cap screw to tighten the blade in there. And I already had a dull blade from the Sawzall. So, yep. So the bolt is in. Is the only thing I really had to go out and buy. And like I said, it's about $2 at Lowe's. So this is probably going to be one of the things that we feature in this next week's upcoming As the Lathe Turns social get-together. We're going to talk about how to make it, how to use it, and some of the techniques, and demonstrate some of it, as well as everything else that we're going to be talking about. I think last week I might have made the mistake of saying that it's on the 20th, which would be this Thursday. It is not. It's going to be next Thursday on the 27th from 7 to 9. It will be the first As the Lathe Turns that we're doing, but we're going to try and have some type of a topic every time that people can come, and if you're interested in wood turning, or even if you've never done it, but you want to learn more about it, it's a great time to come. There will be people there who can answer your questions. There are going to be people there who are going to ask questions, and it's just a great time to discuss about wood turning and get a little bit of exposure to it. So if there's nobody working in the woodworking zone at the time, since this is not a paid class, there's no fee for this class, just show up and enjoy yourself. If there's nobody using any of the big machines in there, we'll be in the woodworking area. If not, we may end up in here, depending on how many people there are, or we'll be out there by the hospitality table and do some talking there. So, any questions? No? Okay, that's it.
You never cease to amaze me what you can do with wood. Okay, we've got some announcements. Oh, Joe has one. Do it, Joe.
I didn't get to put my sign up on the list.
That's right. My apology for not asking.
Might have been covered already. But, hello everybody. This Friday, we're going to be having a art crafting social Friday evening. It's on the events calendar, and we have a few people signed up already. But we've done it before. Tracy's hosted a few of them, and this week's we're going to be making our own mobiles. So I know that we've had a lot of interest about the large one that is hanging out in the metalworking department, and so we'll be making our own little thing. So come on out and join us. I think that I said starting at 7, I believe, on Friday. But anyways, it's on the calendar. So come on out. Don't need any special skills. Just come on out and have some fun and make your own little mobile.
Thank you, Joe. So that covers one of the things I was going to announce. So thank you for having a real-life example. Hand in the back?
Sorry, actually, I was thinking of the show.
Oh.
I didn't sign up.
Oh, that's all right. Come on up. We'll give you 3 more minutes.
Yes. I'll try and keep it brief.
All right. Hello, hello. Is this good? Does this sound good?
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, so today I was going to show off this knife handle and sheath combo that I made with the knife blank that I had on hand. I can go over a little bit of the process of how I did it, some of the issues I have with mine, and how I would fix it in the future, I guess. So how I did it was I had originally had, a piece of wood that I had cut in half and cut long ways. And once I had two different pieces of wood, like a sandwich, I traced the knife like a silhouette so that I could carve out manually. I don't know if you can see this, probably not. Let's see. Yeah, can't quite see it. But I manually carved out the knife where it would be. I don't know, I guess the sheath end. And eventually I lined it with felt. Now, that actually ended up being a problem because when I had originally carved it, I carved it to be nice and flush whenever it was just the wood, but I had eventually decided I wanted to glue this felt in here for a nice, smooth, once your knife was in there, it would feel nice. It would also hide some of the less efficient carve marks that I had left on the inside in here. And obviously you can't see them, which was a massive benefit of the of the felt. But when I had added the felt, it actually didn't fit all the way in as much as I had liked. Had to do a bunch of modifications on the handle. So if you're ever going to do a hand-carved knife sheath, I would recommend adding in the felt into the calculations, as I did not. A couple of other issues that I had was that, actually I'll get to that a little bit later. So eventually, after I had carved out where the blade was going to go, I glued them together sandwich style, and I knew it fit and all that. I had to carve out the handle and did it also sandwich style, where I marked all these pins, milled them out, and then glued it together with the handle inside, and eventually put the pins in so that it would be nice and firmly in place. But unfortunately, one of the things I did not consider was these magnets that I had really wanted to put in here. I really wanted to be held together with magnets. I don't know why, I was obsessed. Honestly, it worked really well with the felt. I really didn't need to do this, but I didn't actually leave enough room to put magnets inside of this wood before I had sandwiched it, which was actually unfortunate. So I took pieces of wood that was from the same block and glued it onto the back after I'd carved out a spot for the magnets to go. Unfortunately, despite being only inches apart, the color is drastically different. I had originally thought it looked pretty good before I had put my finish on it, like, oh, the color matched pretty well. As soon as I put that oil in there, the color was drastically different, despite being only inches apart on the same board. Very, very surprising to me, but now I know. You really should not depend on your wood to color match, even from the same board. Even if it's just inches apart, you really shouldn't depend for whenever you put the finish on that it's going to color match perfectly along. And let's see here. I guess another issue that was really, really difficult was actually getting this, whenever it's closed, to line up really, really nice. I really, really wanted a nice seam along this. I really did not like to see as big of a seam as it is, but I'm just a mega perfectionist, so seeing this nice dark line across was not what I wanted, but it's really hard to do to get a really nice flat finish. If I were to do that again, I might angle each side so that one side is carved inwards a little bit, one side is carved upwards a little bit, so that when it closes together, it'll just be this outside, that's touching, and the inside aren't touching at all. And that benefit of that would be you can just sand down really, really easily all these spots where maybe the gap is a little bit larger. You could just sand down these other spots where the gap isn't as large, and it would close that gap. But as it is now, it takes a lot of work to fix any of these gaps that I have in the handle. Overall, I was actually pretty pleased with how this turned out. It looks very pretty, especially with the wood I chose. This is a nice curly maple. This is a nice curly maple, which gives it that nice, I don't know what you would call it, maybe that zebra-esque texture, but it's dependent on the light. It's really, really cool looking. I love that. However, curly maple is really, really difficult to carve. All the time, as I was working, I constantly had to sharpen my chisels. Otherwise, it would be incredibly, incredibly difficult to get any wood out. And when you're working with dull chisels, you're more likely to gouge. Another thing with the curly maple is that the grain is also wavy. It makes it really, really easy to gouge. It makes it really, really susceptible to making mistakes and errors that are intractable. You really can't fix it, or it takes a lot of effort to fix. Another reason why I had to do the felt was I didn't sharpen my chisels quite as much as I should have. I was a little impatient. But overall, it works really well. Once I glued up the sheath part and the handle part, I put it together and I sanded them together so that it would be a nice, whenever you touch it, it's a nice even flow into each other. And it gives the appearance of like a single piece of wood whenever you're just looking at it. Obviously, you still see the seam, but it feels really, really nice along that seam. Another thing I probably would have done had I had more time is I probably would have given it, I had a lot of room actually to maybe make the walls a little bit thinner, so it'd be a little smaller in the hand, a little bit of a smaller profile. The smaller profile would have maybe a slightly better hand feel, but after dozens of hours of making this and sanding it down, it took roughly 5 hours to even sand down as much as it is. I think I was done. It feels good in the hand as well, so I think I was pretty much happy with how it turned out. And I can pass this around. Because of the magnets, do be aware, it takes a little bit of effort to pull apart. And if you want to put it back into the sheath, you want to align the spine of the blade with where the spine goes on here, so you don't gouge the felt. Okay, is there any questions? Anything that I missed that I really should have explained better? Anyone would like to know? No? Okay, cool. I'll pass it around so you can feel the fit of the blade and you can feel the finish.
Very nice work. All right. Okay, that's it, right? Right. Okay. Couple of announcements and we'll get out of here. We're migrating to a new version of our accounting software. If you happen to get a weird invoice, just check with Sue. You know, if it says, you know, instead of like $50, it says $500, just go ahead and pay it, and then we'll work it out or something. But seriously, if you get something weird, just check with Sue. She'll work it out. Let's see. It was hot in here earlier. The AC was off, so we keep those running all the time to keep a kind of constant temperature in here. So anyway, we don't want to start thermostat wars like at my house. Okay, classes coming up, things that are happening. Friday, Mobile Mania, as Joe talked about. Wednesday the 26th, there's one ticket left for advanced turning. Thursday the 27th, the July 4th Blinking Star Project. Friday the 28th, heat press and die sub authorization is coming up. And Sunday the 30th will be the virtual board meeting. Everybody is invited to see that or attend and watch how everything works, I guess. So I think that's it. Did I miss anything? No? Good. All right. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. Let's go out to the shop and do something fun.